Explicit instruction, consciousness raising tasks. Now, within explicit instruction, let us talk about consciousness raising tasks that we briefly mentioned in the last module. What is consciousness raising and what are the tasks that can be used? So, consciousness raising is creating a sort of an awareness, creating an understanding of how language is used or how specific forms of language are used to deliver a message. These are also referred to as grammar problem tasks. So they are proper tasks which the learners are given to resolve, like you're given a puzzle to solve. So these are tasks. So these are intended to develop an awareness and to develop a deep understanding of how the language works. So in that case, it is different than noticing. So noticing will be an awareness that whenever we talk about the past, we use a certain specific form of language. But at the level of understanding or awareness, we would be able to understand the nuances or the slight differences that occur in the language, in the form of the language, in the grammar of the language when we are talking about the past and how the language changes its form when it moves from one period to the other. And several other aspects of grammar might be a part of consciousness raising tasks. In these tasks, students are required to analyze a specific data and to actually they now present how the language is working. So they are given this time, the space to put forth their hypothesis about how a language works rather than the teacher explaining the rules of the language. So the learners talk meaningfully about a language point, and this can also be called a negotiation. So this is a negotiation because it is a discussion. It is a task because there is a specific outcome that they need to achieve. There is a specific goal to it. There is a discussion. There is a negotiation of meaning. There is an interpretation of other people's meanings. And it's a proper, I would say, vigorous discussion about how a language works. So consciousness raising tasks do acknowledge learners' internal syllabus. Learners' internal syllabus is their own interlanguage, their own assumptions about language and how a language is constructed. It specifically gears at learner syllabus and tries them or gives them space to externalize or to present their ideas, to articulate them, to talk about them. And together, when the learners do that, they come to some sort of a consensus about how the language is working, learning from each other through what we call a co-construction of knowledge. Now, the question is, what is the rationale for using consciousness-raising tasks? This is based on, or this specific task is based on the assumption that learning is more significant and learning is better if it involves deep processing strategies. And when the learners are given a language text to analyze and to present their ideas about how they work, then it somehow makes them engage in deep processing of the language, which eventually will allow them to understand language at a deeper level. The second main rationale for consciousness raising task is that it is based on the assumption, on the hypothesis that explicit knowledge is a facilitator of acquisition of implicit knowledge. So if someone tells me step by step, or if someone actually allows me to figure out step by step how a car is driven, once I have sort of engaged in those kinds of thoughts, that kind of knowledge, and I have had a rigorous discussion, gradually when I start to drive a car, I will be able to sort of apply that knowledge, and that knowledge will, over the time, with the practice of my driving a car, will become implicit, or something that you can't see, but it is at work. So this was an example of how it might work with the language learning.